Okay. Hi, guys. I'm back again. Let's give this another shot. Just randomly, Facebook Live producer was like, log in. What do you mean log in? It's saved on my laptop. I'm here all the time. So, hooray, Facebook Live. Anywho, since I kind of lost track of where I was going, let's just keep going. So, as usual, for those of you just joining in, the new Facebook Live producer is what we're forced to use right now, and it's awful. I'm not able to see if anyone is here, let alone who is here. So, if you want me to be aware of who you are and what's going on, which I would like, because that way I can interact with you, go ahead and type in the comments so they appear over here so that I can see. And as a reminder for anyone just joining, today is what's maybe not working Wednesday, kind of like Facebook Live producer, not really working so hot. But type in your comments as far as what kind of things you are looking to achieve, like what is currently working for you, whether it's in this time of quarantine or whether it's, bigger than that, related to, career, relationships, all different kinds of goals. I am here to serve you. And the best way I can do that is to know exactly what it is you're looking to have assistance with. So, two more quotes that are actually coming from Gay Hendricks, where a lot of this chapter in my 12-week course, my 90-day program, Becoming the Beacon, chapter 3, week 3, Beliefs Week, we do super deep dives, and a lot of it comes from this book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it comes from that and a combination of the work I've done with this wonderful psychotherapist and author, Marissa Peer. I've watched some of her training videos. I've met her in person. I have done a group workshop with her. She's incredible. So, two more quotes, and then we will dive back into picking up from yesterday on the 4 upper limit problems. So, the seductive comforts of success, though, can lull us into accepting the status quo. While breakthroughs are important and thrilling, it's the subsequent stabilization and integration of the breakthroughs into daily life that really allow the changes to be permanent. So great, yesterday you had some breakthroughs, you had some aha moments, but if you don't implement them into everyday life, it's just going to be a feel-good moment, and then it might linger for a little while, but then life sets in and you haven't implemented actual tools day to day to carry you through and do the work. This is not passive work, guys. If you are actually seeking to make change, whether it be in your career, in your relationships, it all starts here. And if you go about life and you think that you can create these changes without going in here, it's passive. And no matter how proactive you might be feeling like you are being, if you're not doing the inner work and saying, how can I be better? How can I get through this? What do I need to know? What else about myself do I not know? Because you don't know everything about yourself, even if you think you do. That was part of my problem, was that I was so subconsciously damaged from several things that went on in my early childhood, but specifically, I shared a story with you guys yesterday about how I just decided as a toddler that I just wasn't good enough, specifically for my mom. And thank goodness I had my grandmother living right next door to me for most of, I think we moved in there when I was before I was 12, because my youngest sister wasn't born yet. So I think maybe I was 5 or 6. 8? 8 sounds about right. We'll go with 8. 8's a good number anyway. But I moved into a house that was literally next door to my grandparents at a young age. And even prior to that, my grandmother was my babysitter. I was always there anyway. So thank goodness I had my grandmother there to instill the love and the nurturing that I wasn't receiving from my mother. And because of that, that created a more complex cocktail than just mom didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. And so I hardened up and then I went through life. No, 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 no. There are several people who are aware, and you may be one of them, aware that something's off. But you don't know how to fix it. You don't want to address it. You're afraid to address it, which is totally fine. Trust me, it sucks and it's scary. But you're aware that like there's a hole, there's something missing, or you're aware that certain things trigger you, or that you're angry, or something like that. Like there's this general sense of awareness. And then there are special cases like me who had the issue, but then also had somebody over here just drastically overcompensating for the lack. And so I actually grew up thinking I was freaking awesome. Now I was humble and I was very confused because I would just do me, be me, do all the things, excel at all the things because no one told me I couldn't. And so I did. And then kids hated me. I shared a story before where I was picked on all the time, and I was not an ugly duckling. I was talented in all the things. I was the top of my class, smart as a whip. Whatever I touched turned to gold. Like I excelled at everything. All the things. And yet I wasn't bragging about it. It wasn't like I'm better than you. Ha ha. No, I just went about my stuff, did my stuff, and people hated on me. And they would push me into lockers. They would spit on me. They would knock my books out of my hands. They would vandalize my car. They would steal things from me constantly. I had things being stolen all the time. They would break into my locker and steal things. I was constantly a scapegoat and a source of ridicule. And luckily, I had the confidence that from my grandmother's love that I'm good. Like that's on them. Like it sucks that I'm being a victim, but that's on them. And had I not had that extra boost, I would have had the whole lack of love and I would have showed up in a totally different way. So I appreciate and I warrant a lot of my success and my confidence and my self-esteem to my grandmother, and all the confusion I had from external forces because my confidence was so good. I had a lot of confusion externally. And it bothered me deeply, but not to the point where I thought that I needed to make a change. I just couldn't understand why they had issues and they needed to make changes. And so that created this complicated mess where I went for most of my life, I'm 34, I went through most of my life thinking nothing is wrong with me. I'm good. I'm actually really awesome. I don't need to change. And there's the being aware that there's change that has to happen and being resistant to it. And then there is the having no freaking clue that you need to make a change. And if you don't know, like, they actually say, acknowledgement or admitting that you have a problem is the first step to recovery. Well, you can't admit you have a problem if you have no idea that you have a problem. And therefore, you cannot begin to take steps to progress. So for me, it was far more difficult. So if you're somebody sitting there going, I have an inkling that there's things I have to work out, congratulations, you are leaps and bounds ahead of where I was. And it's because of that where you don't realize that you're actively, passively choosing. So actively, passively choosing it to not do the deep work, to get that promotion, to get ahead in life, but not do the inner work, is being someone who is aware that there's things that they could improve on, but like personally, but choosing not to, and going along with whatever life hands you and then achieving and conquering from there. I hope this makes sense. If not, message me. I'll do my best to clarify it a little more for you. So that's actively, passively achieving and going through life. And then there is the aggressively doing the work, which is what you have to do. You have to proactively dive deep and be honest with yourself and show up. So what Gay Hendricks is saying in this quote is basically that, the seductive comforts of success can lull us into accepting the status quo. So you gained a little bit of success. And by the way, success is the biggest catalyst for failure, for stagnation, especially when it comes to business, especially because you gain a little bit of success, especially if you're someone who came from nothing. And all of a sudden, holy crap, I'm good because I came from so little that this is such an exponential change for me that this is awesome. I don't need to work that much harder. And it's that false sense of security that creates a stagnation until all of a sudden you're like time in and you're just like, oh, wait, where'd all my money go? Where'd all my success go? Because you stagnated. You didn't allow yourself to keep improving. You got a little taste of success. You're like, I'm good. This is cool. I'm going to hang out. Like I got my tax refund. Cool. I'm going to hang out. And then the tax refund's gone. Oh crap. Now I got to work hard again. Or like this quarantine. Cool. I've got time off of work. I'm going to play video games and drink and do all the things. Oh crap. It got extended and money's running out and not coming in. Okay. Oh, quarantine's over. Gonna go back to regular life. No. That is not the point of this. And that is not why you are here. The best thing you can do is to get yourself to do the inner work, be proactive, actually go in and discover, okay, maybe I don't think that there's anything wrong with me. Maybe I don't know what I need to, because that's the thing, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the things that you don't know. You're not aware of the things that you don't know. So how can you go about achieving and improving them? That's where you have to be proactive and aggressively do the work. And so by having a breakthrough here, like watching these videos with me and having a breakthrough here, having a breakthrough there, great. But if you don't go and implement that and show up and do the work and make it part of a daily routine, a daily habit, a must, a non-negotiable, make it ingrained as part of your own ethical truth. If you don't do that, then it's just going to be passive change that's going to taper off later on, and you're going to be right back where you started, possibly even worse. So that is like the warning, the caution sign before proceeding that it's going to get ugly before it gets better. And Zach, I see that you're watching. I've got my cell phone here so I can kind of get up to date. Evidently, a Facebook Live producer, it was showing comments in the live video, but apparently it's not showing them at all anymore. Yay! The way technology has been going, you would think we're in Mercury retrograde already, again. So Zach, you commented other than all of us right now, and I wish I knew what that was in regards to. I know that there is a lag in the feed, but also this new live producer is just making things so much more difficult. Big step backwards. So if you can try to elaborate and hopefully it comes up sooner, I can speak to that. Moving forward in the meantime, if we remove the guilt of the crimes our parents and siblings convicted of us before we walked into kindergarten, we are liberated from the main issues that trigger the upper limit problem. If I could consider even for a moment that I was not upset for the reason I thought I was, I could break the trance I was in. Then I could begin to see what the real issues were. Many physical symptoms such as headache and back pain are warning signs, like the flapping and wobble of a flat tire when you're driving on the highway. The symptoms are saying, slow down, stop what you're doing, and pay attention because there's something out of integrity here. Ooh, big nuggets of wisdom in there. Let's break that one down. So I talked yesterday about how you just come into this world, you don't know there's limitations, you don't know there's boundaries, and so you do all the things and you keep going and you keep going until you finally achieve it. And then you do it 20 million more times because you're excited that you finally just achieved what was previously impossible to you. Until mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, brother, sister, cousin, they come in and be like, what are you doing? You can't do that. I can't? No. And that's when we start getting these shells, these boundaries, these borders. Bo, hey buddy. Not now. Sorry. And so we're not intelligent enough, and not that we're not intelligent enough. We have not developed the cognitive tools and abilities to rationalize fully, because our brains are not fully developed, even past the age of 7. So we're still definite sponges. We're not able to totally understand, make sense of reasoning or inflection. I mean, yes, we can understand tone. We can understand, something that's pleasing, something that's scary or painful, but we can't fully reason and understand, especially the deeper meanings, the context behind. You can't do that. We just think that means it literally physically cannot be, even though you might have just done it. And those start to affect us. And so what this is meaning is that if we could go back and remove all that guilt that was put onto us saying, how dare you be so awesome? Life's not really that awesome. Life's actually hard. You're going to have to learn things quick. So you might as well learn it before you can walk. Great. Thanks for just making life harder than it needed to be way earlier. Thanks. Because that's essentially what we do, for better or for worse, well-meaning or not. It happens. It's happened to all of us. So if we can identify, which you have to be able to identify before you can shed it, all these things that we were told that we're not good enough, that we can't do this, we're not worthy enough of receiving fill in the blank. If we could just remove that, then you can see in the moment of being angry, hurt, sad, frustrated, now as an adult, when you have those moments of less than ideal emotions, you can actually think, wait a second, what does this connect to? Oh, that's not even me. That's something that somebody else said. And that's why a couple days ago we had that exercise of like, what's the shit that you keep talking to yourself? Whose words are those? Are they yours or are they someone else's? And if they're someone else's, you can just, hey, get out of here. You don't belong here. If they're yours, then you retrain yourself. And then this goes on to say physical symptoms. It's actually, science has started to come out and prove that when children say that they have a tummy ache, they don't actually have a tummy ache. There's nothing biologically wrong with their tummies. It's actually their way of expressing and dealing with anxiety, with fear. Because kids tend to have tummy aches for a whole lot of things, right? And so science is actually showing that. Now, when you have psychosomatic, when you have psychosomatic things that go on where you're angry at somebody, right? You tense up. When you're frustrated or annoyed, your body, you want to pay attention to how you're physically responding, because we get so emotionally caught up and sometimes even intellectually caught up on how we are feeling that we don't realize how we're feeling. And just like when you work out, you tense up these muscles and that creates lactic acid buildup. And if you don't have the massage or the stretching, the cool down workout afterward to remove and flush out that lactic acid, it just goes somewhere. So when you're having emotional upsets, when you are a child and you're constipated because you don't know, you're just like, I can't go to the bathroom. I don't wanna, right? When the little kid exercises, like they totally have to go to the bathroom, but they realize that they have choice and they have control over something in their bodies because they're little and everyone else takes control over everything else in their life. But I can control if I poop or pee my pants. That's the greatest thing in the world. I have control over something. That's like literally the first time as a human you realize that you have any sense of control. And so you're like, nope, I'm not going to do it. Not to be necessarily defiant, but because I have sense of control. Now, the deeper aspect to that is that something's going on that you're not happy with. And so you feel like, you don't have control over something. So you find something that you do have control over. Fast forward to modern real life ways that you can relate to that. Stress eating, You go through a breakup, what's the first thing females do? Many of us, it's super cliche and total white girl, but we go grab the Haagen-Dazs or the Ben and Jerry's and we watch a rom-com and we cry and eat the whole freaking tub of it. It's awful. Like, it's those responses to emotions, partially because we haven't been fully equipped with how to healthily express and manage them, but also because we just go to what's comforting. So if we were to take the time to be more physically conscious, and this is where meditation is a huge help, and I hope that you've been practicing daily. When you become more conscious of the thoughts that you're thinking, you can start to be more conscious of the feelings you're feeling. And that's why part of the meditations that I do are focusing on scanning the body, right? You become aware of the physical portions of your body. And when you're doing a body scan, you can say, oh, this actually feels kind of tight here. Like, I didn't realize I have sore muscle here. Like, where did that even come from? How did that even get there? And you don't have to know the why. You just have to say, oh, something feels off. So if you're somebody who sees a chiropractor or needs to see a chiropractor and you're aware that you need to, a doctor, and we can dive deeper into this in private sessions if you like, but it has definitely come to find out if you are somebody with chronic ailments, specifically respiratory issues. If you study the chakras, it has to do with communication. This is your expression, right? And so if you typically have sore throats, bronchitis, anything upper respiratory infections, it has to do with problems communicating. It's like physically manifesting. You cannot communicate at least as effectively as you could when you were totally healthy. And so it's very interesting. And I haven't done much studying on this, but I've learned a little bit here and there, which I'm fascinated by. Different aches and pains and ailments that you have in your body directly correlate to things that are out of alignment spiritually and emotionally. So so that has to do with communication. And tummy troubles, like I said, with children, shows up as anxiety a lot. Tummy troubles are often associated with things that you need to let go, right? The tummy digests things and then eliminates them. And if it's having trouble digesting, you're having trouble letting go or digesting a situation or a circumstance. And that's why many children have tummy troubles, because they're having anxiety. They're having trouble managing and figuring out what's going on. They can't process things exactly. So my tummy hurts, and that's anxiety. So what Hendricks is saying here is many times when you feel a physical symptom, you have a headache, you have back pain, those are warning signs. Those are saying, hey, something's not right. Please go in. And if you just heal the physical aspect and not the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspect, you're essentially putting a Band-Aid on it, and eventually it'll show up and it'll probably be worse. And that's where I was talking about earlier about going through life passively or going through life proactively. I hope that makes sense. So if you're just attending to the physical symptom, you're not attending to the whole cure. And this is not by any means to take away from validity in science and modern medicine. Like, absolutely, if something's wrong, go see the doctor. But also look into the other well-roundedness of what's going on in your life or what has gone on in your past so that you can heal the whole thing. There's a little story I'll share with you, and then I promise we'll dive into this. But there's a little story, and it's so crude, but I guess it's a very ancient story. And they talk about this guy was out went to the river one day, and he noticed a baby was in a little bassinet floating downstream. He's like, oh my gosh. So he jumps into the river, gets the baby, saves it, brings it into town. He goes back out to the river to relax, and then he sees another baby floating there. And soon enough, he sees a bunch of bassinets with babies. And he's like, oh my gosh, we've got to go get the whole village. Like, we've got to save these babies. And so he goes, he gets the village, and the whole village is out there taking the babies out of the water, saving, rescuing the babies. Until somebody finally says, hey, why don't we go upstream and find out why and how these babies are going into the river? So instead of wasting our energy, like, yeah, absolutely save the baby. Like, you got to save the baby. You've got a physical issue. Like, yeah, absolutely go see the doctor. But unless you go upstream and find out who's dumping these babies in the water in the first place, the babies are probably going to keep coming. And you're probably going to keep expending energy to rescue these babies. So you're going to keep spending time and money and energy working on the symptoms instead of going deep, going upstream, going deep. You know, upstream is difficult than downstream. Not going with the flow, going against the flow, going back and unraveling all the years of becoming who you've become thus far, to going back and finding out who you really are, healing the wound, extracting it. So that's where these upper limit problems come in, to figure out what they are, where they're coming from, and then we can start to release. So up until this point, you've probably just been rescuing babies out of the water. Not anymore. So I'm just going to remind you. Now this it was created for personal practice so that you can read it and say, I am enough. Given that I'm broadcasting to groups of people, it's now showing up as like, I'm enough, which I am enough, but you are enough. Just a reminder. And I have actually had this written on my bathroom wall. If you have a mirror, ladies, take out lipstick. I am enough. Guys, what can you use? A Post-it note on a mirror. You can use, if you use guy liner, no judgment, whatever it is, put it on a mirror that you look into daily. Even if you don't read it subconsciously, you know it's there, and subconsciously it's going in, which is much better in the healing process than even consciously. Because subconsciously is where all that natter and shit talk is anyway. Subconsciously is where you need it to go so that it can actually do the dirty work. It's like the scrubbing bubbles, right? The manual labor is to scrub it on your own. But you put the scrubbing bubbles on there and they penetrate deep under the, like, isn't that what they're advertised? They penetrate deep under the surface. And so they do all the hard work so that you can just go through and wipe it off. That is what these affirmations do. That is what seeing I am enough, saying I am enough all the time. That's what that does. It's like the scrubbing bubbles for your soul. Ooh, I like that one. So I said that we would dive into, in more depth, the 4 upper limit problems. We'll go more into depth with those today, talk about those. And then tomorrow, I will guide you through the process of discovering when you first felt that you were not enough. So if this is intriguing to you, I urge you, stick around so you can learn more about this, but I urge you to show up tomorrow morning to really do the deep work. And yes, you can totally catch the live replay that will totally be effective, but there is this collective consciousness, this collective energy where it is much more potent if you are online with me and we're all doing it together. So that being said, the first one, the big one, especially for me and for most of us. And now keep in mind, out of these 4, it's not that you're definitely in one camp and not the others. You very well could be. You totally could be. But more than likely, you've got a couple of pieces in some of these. Maybe not all of them, but in some of these. So feeling fundamentally flawed is basically saying that even at my best, I'm still not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I am a certain race, a certain ethnicity. That's never going to get me anywhere past X. I am female and I'm born into a world of financial inequality and perhaps physical inequality. Now, these are stereotypes and these are excuses. These are not truths. unless you've accepted them as truths. So I am just kind of laying the groundwork here so you can get an idea of the foundation for where the shit talk you have comes into play. So fundamentally flawed. I'm not even going to bother because I already know that, it hasn't worked out in the past for me. So why on earth would it ever work out for me in the future? And I think it's not a definition of insanity, but it is, it'll come to me. You are letting your past predict your future. How much logical sense does that make? Now, we're taught in schools, learn about your history so you don't repeat the bad things in history, right? Like that's why we're taught that we learn about history. But the cracks in that they fail to mention is that we're really just building awareness that, yes, history tends to repeat itself. But that's because we haven't learned, right? When you find yourself dating the same kind of person, you find yourself in the same financial situation, you find yourself in the same scenario with different friends, like you've moved and you moved to get away and start a new life. And then lo and behold, shortly thereafter, or a few years later, you find yourself in the same scenarios. It's because there are lessons to be learned. And for everyone, it's different. And if you're not picking up what it's putting down, it's going to knock a little louder and it's going to keep showing up and it's going to keep being available to you. And you can look at it as like, this is so frustrating. I just want to be over with this. Or you can choose love over fear. You can choose to say, oh, learning opportunity. Don't know what it is. It kind of sucks, but I know as long as I'm open to learning it, then I can get through it. And then I don't have to repeat it. So when you're feeling fundamentally flawed, it probably shows up in that you have a tendency to just avoid doing things because your past has shown you that it doesn't really work out. When rather, the remedy for that is to see how to do things differently. Of course, if you go into the same situation with the same line of thinking you've had in the past, of course, you're going to have the same similar results. The definition of insanity is, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. And that's exactly what happens. And so if you have this ingrained belief that you are fundamentally flawed at your core, then it doesn't matter what you attempt to do, it's not going to be good enough. You just simply are not good enough. And therefore, you know what? Don't even bother. Don't even try. You've seen this song and dance before. You know the routine. It's not going to change. Sound familiar? Second upper limit problem of disloyalty and abandonment. This typically shows up in people who are confident, headstrong in their abilities, and they follow their heart, which they have been taught through experience that if I follow my heart, sure, I might be happy, but look at the path of destruction I caused. Look at all the hearts that I broke in speaking my truth. Look at the dismay my family looks at me because I got a degree in music business management instead of becoming a nurse or a doctor. And they look down on me. I love that I did that. I had fun. It was great. I had amazing experiences that, well, there are some that I would trade, but, that I just embrace. But then I have to go home and see my family and look at the destruction that's caused. So this one is really looking at is there a family rule? Especially if you're the kind of person that can be like, oh, my family is very much fill in the blank. Especially if families have traditions. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with traditions. I fully intend to have lots of amazing traditions in my future family. But families that tend to have, that are very close knit, and that have like my family, like if you can very definitively be like, oh, this is so characteristic of my family, or we really value this. We like, you all know when there's certain topics like that are just off limits that do not get brought up in the house. Like you go home for the holidays and it's like, we can talk about all these things, but this thing. That's probably a good indicator that if you pursue your authentic self, you're going to hurt somebody by showing up as your full self. You're going to disappoint somebody if they were to see who you really are. This shows up massively in people who are like sexually repressed. If often it shows up in homosexuality, where if it is like considered a taboo in the family, if you were to be your authentic self, loving whoever you choose to love, that might break your mother's heart, or you might be disowned by your father. So there's this whole spectrum of things. That is where you are breaking the bonds, and it doesn't have to be necessarily the family. It can show up. I mean, that's where it starts typically, but it can show up like, oh man, I really would love to take on this project at work, but that's not even in my field, or I'm not at that department yet. I haven't received that promotion, so it's out of the scope of my job. I can't do that yet. My role in the company is to do this. And even though I have these brilliant ideas that could take us somewhere else, I would feel like I'm breaking a bond. Or I hate this job, but I've been here for so long, and I love some of my coworkers. I would be abandoning them if I went and pursued my dream career. So different ways that can show up. And let me know, type in the comments if these are resonating with you, if you have questions about them. Believing more success brings a bigger problem, also known as I am a burden. This can show up like typically, and I keep going back to families because this is where it starts. Family not wanting to hear about your victories. And this can very, very closely, they're all very closely related. You can kind of see how they can become intertwined. Hence having multiple issues. This shows up as having had a success, and even if it is in alignment with the family goals. So let's say I did go on and pursue a healthcare career, and I went home and I was just like, hey, so I totally just saved this patient today. Let me tell you about it. And the family's like, Al, apparently what I have to say is of no importance. Okay, how was your day? It's dismissing you regardless of your contributions. And what that says to you when it happens as a young child, it says that not so much that I'm not enough, but that my mere existence weighs you down. If you have a parent that I have a lot of Jewish friends. It's big in the Jewish community, guilt, right? And the Catholic community, a lot of the Catholic guilt, right? Oh, you're going to do that to your poor mother? I raised you. You don't know all the sacrifices I made for you? Oh, who's heard that one before? The sacrifices I've made for you? What does that say? Especially when you're a young child, that says you are a burden. I had to alter my life. I had to make all these sacrifices that I would not have had to make if it weren't for you. And it doesn't have to come out as aggressive and mean like that. Actually, there's an amazing book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. Highly recommend that. And Vishen Lakhiani, the author, he talks about, I'm pretty sure it came from that story. I don't think it was from The Big Leap. But he talks about his parents were arguing in the car. They were about to go, it was his birthday, and they were going to go buy him, I think it was like Toys R Us or whatever, and they were going to buy him, whatever he wanted. And and I've heard similar stories from other sources where one, mom and dad were arguing in the car about money, but then they put on their smiles and were like, okay, go ahead and pick out whatever you want. And he just grabbed a coloring book. This poor young child doesn't really have a full grasp of money yet, but he still knows, like, this probably doesn't cost much. I'll just take this. There's another story I heard where, and they're not saying like you can only get one thing. They're just like, whatever you want, honey. No, go ahead, get more, whatever you want. But the damage has already been done. Like, there's a scarcity mindset here, and I'm adding to it. So play small. Don't ask for too much. Yeah, that's another way this being a burden is if you don't ask for the things that you require, you don't ask for the things that you need, and you just kind of take what you can get here and there, just barely gliding through. Okay, yeah, I mean, if it's not too much trouble, go ahead. Oh, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. It's okay. I can manage. I've got this. I'm fine. You've got this because you didn't allow yourself to receive, because at some point when you were younger, receiving was a task because there wasn't enough to go around, or at least so it seemed. Another mentor of mine talks about how, I think it was her, she remembers going to the pawn shop with her mother, where she pawned some valuable ring to get money to buy her socks or something. And okay, you're a young child, you can't fully understand the magnitude of this, let alone, and you might very well appreciate, and mind you, she didn't say, I have to do this for you. That's a direct way. But the subliminal way is where they're just like, come on, baby, mommy's got to make a stop real quick, and then we'll go get your shoes. Okay. And just witnessing that kids pick up on things. So something, if you have memories like that, that probably relates to you showing up as a burden in someone's life. And then later on, it's, the overconfidence of like, no, I got this. And you've probably headstrong bulldozed your career path. You've probably like overcome a lot of odds. And it's because you're not able to open up and receive. You have to do everything yourself, because if you let anybody do anything for you, you're a burden on them, and you don't want to be a burden anymore. And finally, the crime of outshining. You are a beautiful, wonderful, strong, intelligent, young little child, and somebody else has other issues that have nothing to do with you, or they wanted the toy or the prize that you ended up getting, and you feel bad. And so you stop showing up because you don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. That's a big thing with siblings. I had 2 older cousins, and then I was 7 when I had my first sister. And, of course, when I was, and we're a small family. And so my 2 older cousins, they lived practically almost there all the time. And they would do their things. Like, we would have talent shows for my grandparents in the living room, and they would do their thing. And, for however actually talented or not they were, it didn't even matter, because since I was the youngest, I was the baby, and other things going on with my mother, I got all the attention. I got all the praise. And so I was like, yeah, I'm awesome. And that kind of said to my older cousins, like, you're not really that great. Well, that wasn't the case at all. They were just overly showing me love and compassion to try to compensate for what was missing in my life. Well, fast forward, then I get a younger sister, and I'm like, hey, pay attention to me. Look at me. Why am I not, I'm confused. I was the star, and now you don't even care. Like, I just did this awesome thing. I just learned this new gymnastic trick. And meanwhile, mom's like, that's nice. Okay. And then I see my cousins all mad, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm too much. And you go into school, and I get the lead in the plays, I get the solos in the music, and I become captain of this, captain of that, whatever. And kids don't like that. Well, I wanted that role, the role in the play. I wanted the lead. I wanted that. I wanted that. Well, I'm already getting picked on a lot, and I don't have a lot of friends. At the very least, it'd be nice to stop getting picked on as much. I guess I will just, oh, it was no big deal. Oh, those, the fact that I graduated third in my class, it's nothing to do with, the fact that I busted my ass and had almost no social life because I studied my butt off the whole time. But no, it's just like, oh, I don't know. It's whatever. It's not a big deal. I mean, you could do it too, I'm sure. Humility and humbleness, especially over humility. I mean, it's good to have humbleness, but it's also great to stand in your truth and be like, yeah, I was captain of this. I did this. And it's not, I mean, you can take it over the top and brag about it, things, but you can also say, just acknowledge it. And we're taught in polite society not to acknowledge our strengths and actually acknowledge our weaknesses, apologize for them, and just kind of fade in the background. You are a star and you were meant to shine, and you always did until somebody came in and told you something was wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You just forgot who you are. So I'm here to help you remember. Unfortunately, I don't have time for questions today, but I am always available throughout the day. If you would like to DM me, you can email me. You can go to wildblossombeacon.com, wildblossombeacon@yahoo.com, or just simply go to Cassandra Renee, not my personal profile, Cassandra Smith, but Cassandra Renee. Go to my page and you can send me a message, and I'm more than happy to elaborate with you. And I do free clarity calls all the time. So just message me when you would like to schedule a time that we can get together and about a half hour of your time, and we'll discover things like what your limiting beliefs are and how we can overcome them. So that is my time for now. I will be back in about 4 hours for your midday mindset shift. So go on, have an amazing day. And as always, cough into your elbow, wash your hands, and stay home. I love you guys. Thank you so much for showing up, and thank yourself for showing up. I'm proud of you. Bye.